What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. In case you haven't seen my face before, I'm YBC2Cold. I'm the guy who makes all these tier lists you've been watching for the past few months, and today I have a very special video for you because we're going to be talking about the causes of inceldom, right? Because inceldom is a growing epidemic. More and more men are just completely checking out of dating, not talking to women. They don't have any social opportunities. They're not out and about. They're kind of just home all day playing video games, doing whatever. And, I predict that this is going to be a growing trend within the next few years. We're going to see this more and more often. And, I decided to make this video because in my experience dealing with a lot of guys, helping them transform their dating lives, guys in my private community, I've pretty much determined that there's 3 possible causes for why somebody can even be an incel in the first place, or why somebody may not necessarily be an incel, but may not have the dating results that they want. It really comes down to 3 factors. Nothing else really plays a role as far as what you can practically do. Like some other things may play a role, but chances are those things would be out of your control, right? It comes down to looks, social skills, and exposure, right? If you are struggling in your dating life, I'd like you to reflect. Chances are it comes down to one of these 3 factors. It's either your looks are not adequate enough to get the results you want, your social skills are horrible, like you literally can't talk to women, you might potentially be neurodivergent, or you're just simply not getting enough exposure. There's a lot of guys who join my community and they're like, dude, I'm pretty good looking, I don't know why I struggle in dating. And then I ask them, how many girls have you talked to in the past week? And they're always like, oh, I think I talked to like 1 or 2. And it's like, of course you're going to be struggling if you're not getting adequate exposure. You need more volume, you need more women to see you and to interact with you so that you can potentially take it somewhere. So let's explore all of these causes and let's look at what we can do about it and what the certain thresholds are that you need to meet so that you can actually transform your life. So let's start with the biggest factor, because I know this is the thing that a lot of the black pillars are going to jump on. A lot of people who watch me who are obsessed with face and height are going to go into like, dude, it's obviously looks, man. 90% of the time it's looks. So let's take a look and see what looks are saying here. So I've decided to separate this into 3 categories. At first we have face, and then we have physique, and then we have height. So let's start with face, right? This is typical black pill categorization. I want you to be honest here when you're categorizing yourself. Put yourself in one of the following categories that I'm about to explain. So at first we have sub 5, which means that you are below average facially, you are considered unattractive by the majority of people. An example of this is the greatest pickup artist of all time, Yad, who I put in the top left over here. Yad is definitely a sub 5, though despite being a sub 5, he was able to overcome this and transform his dating life. But I know a lot of people are going to say scripted, fake, he paid women, whatever, dude. This is another example of a sub 5 and over here as well. So this is really where you don't want to be, because, I'm not saying that all sub 5s are destined to have terrible dating lives. We do see exceptions here and there, but they're exceptions for a reason. Exceptions prove the rule. And the rule is that if you're ugly facially, you have deformities, you have asymmetries, you don't take care of your skin, you have a recessed face, all of these things are going to compound and make your dating life an uphill battle, even with a lot of exposure and with a lot of social skills. Am I saying that it's impossible for sub 5s to pull? No, but you're going to need a lot more exposure, and your charisma basically needs to be perfect. Your social skills need to be on point for you to even get your foot in the door, because it's like you're kind of climbing an uphill battle by compensating for your looks to such a high degree. A lot of the sub 5s who pull also tend to have some kind of status, some kind of money, and whether they get genuine desire from the women they date is pretty questionable. So you really don't want to be here, but the good news is that a lot of guys who are in this category are not too far down this category. They can actually ascend, they can actually reach at least average looking facially, in my opinion. Above that, we have low tier normie, which means, you're somewhat average to slightly below average, but we can improve your looks a reasonable amount. And then obviously, we have mid tier normie, which is just your average face to maybe slightly above average, but this is kind of the target face threshold that you want. I'd say that I'm here comfortably. And when you're here, your looks start to become a non-factor. Like, you're not going to get special privileges for the way that you look, but you can also start to leverage your social skills. You're not going to need as much brutal amount of exposure as like somebody in this category or somebody in this category. So you definitely want to at least be here with your dating life. It's going to make things so much easier. You're going to be able to smooth sail, and don't worry, we're going to get into exactly how you can ascend your looks. Above this, we have a high tier normie. This is just your regular good looking guy. Everybody kind of has a friend who's like this, or knows somebody who's in this category. Just your normal good looking guy, you know, they probably have a decent looking girlfriend, but guys in this category kind of coast off their looks. So in my humble opinion, from what I've seen, guys in the categories below, because they have more to compensate for, they actually end up getting better results because they put in more work, they do more approaches, they get more exposure, and they work on their game and their social skills like their life depends on it. So the guys in the bottom who actually take the initiative tend to outlap guys in these two categories. Next up, we have Chad Light. This is just like, you know, a top 1% face, very, very good looking guy. These guys are just going to get a shit ton of choosing signals. Women are just going to kind of approach them. They rarely ever have to do an approach. But here's the thing. Most guys are not going to reach Chad Light. Like, I don't care how many surgeries you do. I don't care how much soft maxing you do. These guys are anomalies of men, right? These guys are like top 1% guys. So if you're not already there and you're not genetically disposed to being there, I highly doubt you're going to get there through soft maxing, hard maxing, even if you do the most extreme looks maxing. Like, in my opinion, on average, people are going to be able to ascend like one tier, right? So if you're starting off here, you've already hit puberty, you're already kind of soft maxed, the most you can do is probably get to here, right? After that, you know, there's not really much you can do unless you go down extreme measures, or unless you just have an exception face to where you actually can ascend 2 tiers. So yeah, we have Chad Light, and then obviously Chad, like, you know what's funny is people always say like, oh, but Chad doesn't have to do this, Chad doesn't have to do that. Chads are like 1 in a million faces, dude. Okay, like, of course, somebody who's a genetic exception is probably not going to need that much exposure or that much social skills. But here's the thing. All of these guys get insane amounts of exposure because they are famous. And I guarantee you, all of these guys have incredible social skills as well, right? So there's no such thing as a Chad who has bad social skills because they've been positively reinforced their whole lives. They've been given good feedback their whole lives. So they're just naturally confident. They naturally do the right things. Whereas people in the lower tiers who maybe didn't get as much positive reinforcement might have to develop that. And in my opinion, one of the best ways of developing that is through cold approach, is through learning game, is through being persistent, learning from your interactions. That's the best way that somebody can improve socially. And if you want to learn more about how to do that, you can check out my private community. We go very, very in-depth into these topics. I help guys increase their conversions with cold approach, date the girls that they actually want to date instead of settling for mids, like a lot of black pill advice, like, oh, bro, you should go for girls who are 2 points lower than you. Fuck that shit. Everybody wants a girl as attractive as them, if not more attractive, okay? So if you're interested in that, check out my community, link in the description. Anyways, so categorize yourself into one of these categories. And ideally, again, if you are somebody who struggles a lot with women, despite doing a lot of exposure, you're probably in one of these 2 tiers, brother. I'm not gonna lie, you're probably below the target face threshold. So keep that in mind. Now let's get into what you can do about it, right? How can we ascend our looks? Because at the end of the day, guys, no matter what tier you're in, if you can be better looking, you probably should be, okay? Looks are becoming more and more important as we approach the digital age, as people are starting to meet online. And, you know, the world is just becoming more superficial. Back in the day, you'd see a good-looking guy with an ugly girl, an ugly guy with a good-looking girl. Nowadays, you don't really see that as much, partially because people don't have game and people's social skills are worse, but also because looks are just becoming more important, right? So, soft maxing. The first thing you can do is fix your diet. If you have a lot of acne, if you have bad skin, that is probably a big indication that there's something off with your diet, with your gut health, with your microbiome, with just everything inside, right? You fix your skin from the inside out. What do I recommend? I recommend eating whole foods and an animal-based diet. So things like red meat, dairy, eggs, and fruit. Okay, stick to those 4. You know, there's certain debates in the looks maxing community. Should I go full carnivore? Should I try raw meat? I'm not going to give you specific diet advice. What works for me is just a whole foods animal-based diet. That's been working for me for the longest time. It's cleared up my skin. I feel healthy. I have more energy when I eat this way. So yeah, that's pretty much it for diet. And when you eliminate garbage, processed foods, and unnecessary carbs, you're going to lose weight. You're naturally going to be lean, and it's just smooth sailing from there. So the next thing you can do is neck training. A thicker neck gives you a more dimorphic and masculine appearance. So I don't recommend overdoing neck training because you could get sleep apnea. There's a lot of issues with it. but light neck training, maybe once every other day or once every 3 days. You could do neck curls, reverse neck curls, side curls. You can search up a neck exercise video and just copy the training. You don't have to use too much progressive overload. The neck is very androgenic, so it's gonna grow. Next up, we have eyebrows and eyelashes. Probably the easiest things to ascend, in my opinion. With eyebrows, what you want to do is you want them to be as thick as possible. If you have really thin eyebrows and the hairs aren't very dense, then you can look into dyeing your eyebrows. You can look into lash serums. Same thing with your eyelashes as well. Obviously, you can use a beard to hide your recessed jaw, or if you have a poor jawline, you can just grow your beard out. It's a really good way to like kind of fraud max a strong jawline. Obviously, exercise is extremely important as well. I'm going to get into that in the physique section. Teeth whitening, if your teeth are yellow, you can look into teeth whitening, or you can do it like a more natural way. Hair care, of course, experiment with different hairstyles. Take care of your hair. I know it's fucking, just get a haircut, bro, but it's true. And then lastly, we have myofunctional therapy. Having correct tongue posture, swallowing habits, breathing habits, chewing habits, all of those things are going to compound and develop your face, especially if you are younger. So if you're like under 18, you're still in development, correct tongue posture, correct breathing, swallowing, chewing habits are going to have insane returns as you get older. So this is kind of soft maxing. Generally speaking, if you do all the right soft maxing for your face, you will probably ascend one tier, I would say. So like if you're a low tier normie, you can get up to mid tier normie. Yeah, and then obviously we have hard maxing. Now, I was actually against surgery in the beginning. Like if you watch some of my old tier lists, I'm like, dude, why the fuck would anybody get surgery? But now, as I age and as I mature, I'm starting to understand that, you know, some people are just going to do whatever it takes to win. And if you are one surgery away from looking better, given that it's low risk, high reward, like obviously you don't want to do something like an OBO that might fuck up your face. It's very high risk. Few people would actually get away with doing that. But if you have a low risk, high reward kind of surgery, shout out to Face IQ. I actually should have done this video with him, but you know, I was traveling, I went to Bali, so our schedules kind of didn't align there. But yeah, so hard maxing, if you've tried soft maxing, you feel like your looks aren't there yet, you haven't reached that minimum threshold, then I would argue look into hard maxing, right? Look into low risk, high reward things like fat grafting, you know, lower eyelid, upper eyelid fat grafting. You can look into certain pharmaceuticals like Accutane if you have acne. If you're balding, look into minoxidil, finasteride, dutasteride. You know, I don't really recommend going too crazy with it. Like, you know, hair transplants, fine. Double jaw surgery, kind of crazy, right? Because you kind of got to eat pureed food for like 6 months. You know, but again, you guys make that decision for yourself. Look into it, do your own research. I advise you do everything within your power to increase your looks within a reasonable amount. We don't want to be insecure. We don't want to just do a bunch of fucking surgeries to try to be Chad, even though we know we're never going to get there. But we want to reasonably ascend our looks as much as possible. Let's talk about the other thing. So I think we've covered face pretty well. You want to be above a low tier normie, at least here. Let's talk about height now, right? Height is a big one because it's a big insecurity for a lot of people, if I'm being honest, right? A lot of people are like, dude, you know, I'm 5'6". I've been rejected for my height plenty of times. And there is something to be said about that. If you are 5'4" or under, just understand that the majority of women are going to reject you purely based off your height. You are too short for a lot of girls, and that is just the truth. Like, can you move somewhere like Southeast Asia and get away with being 5'4" and get a girl? Absolutely. But I'm not going to lie to you and say that it doesn't hurt your chances. You will have to be more persistent and shoot a shit ton of volume. Like if you are determined to win as somebody who is 5'4" or under, you're going to have to shoot a shit ton of volume. You're going to have to be persistent in the face of rejection. Your exposure and your social skills have to pretty much be perfect. I know guys who are 5'4" and under who pull, just like how I know guys who are sub 5 and low tier normie who pull a ton of girls as well. It's just about how far are you willing to go? How far are you willing to go to be the exception? That's up to you to decide. Next up, we have 5'5" to 5'7". This is still considered pretty damn short, but if you're in this height range, there's definitely things you can do, especially if you're still in development. We're going to get into some solutions later, but again, you're still going to have to shoot a lot more exposure. Then you have 5'8" to 5'10", which is, I would say, around the average height range in most countries. This is where your height becomes a non-factor. Like you're most likely not going to be rejected just for your height, unless the girl has a fucking tall guy fetish, which you know, a lot of girls do these days. But yeah, I mean, if you're average height, you really shouldn't think too much or be too insecure about your height, I would say. And then we have 5'11" to 6'1". At this point, you really shouldn't be too fucking schizo about your height. Like, any extra height would help, but you're good enough, bro. You're tall enough. Like, relax. And then 6'2" and over, I would say between 6'2" to 6'4" is like ideal height for women. Anything above that becomes niche maxing. You're kind of extremely tall. You're like NBA player maxing. But yeah, let's look into solutions for height. What can you do? The first thing you can do is fraud maxing by wearing shoe lifts. Do I recommend fraud maxing? Not really, because you know, when the shoes come off, she gonna know that you're shorter, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as the shoes come off, she will notice those two. Actually, I don't fucking know if she'll notice. I actually don't know. I should do an experiment. I should fraud max an extra like 3 inches and then see if a girl notices when I take my shoes off. I feel like women are so fucking stupid, they're not even gonna notice. So you can consider fraud maxing. There are shoe lifts that will make you taller by like 3 inches. You can consider limb lengthening surgery, which is kind of fucked, right? But that's like if you're really short and, you know, you really want to take an extreme solution to gain 5 to 6 inches of height, you can definitely look into limb lengthening surgery. Again, I'm not making any recommendations here. I'm just giving you possible solutions that you can explore. Next up, we have posture correction. Believe it or not, if you have a slouch, if you have forward head posture, you might be losing out on an inch potentially. So correcting your posture could have some ROI there. Adequate nutrition, sleep, and sunlight during development. Arguably one of the most important things that you can do. Guys, I would say height is probably around 80% genetic, 20% environment, maybe 70-30. Making sure that you're getting enough micronutrients, macronutrients, getting enough sleep, getting enough sunlight is going to ensure that you grow to your optimal state, that you grow to your genetic ceiling. Because someone might grow to 5'4", but his actual genetic ceiling is like 5'7" if he locked in during development. Look into raw milk. There are studies that show that countries that consume raw milk have a higher height on average. So you might want to look into that. Next up, we have walking on your tippy toes everywhere. That one is a fucking joke. Don't do that. You look retarded. Geomaxing, again, some countries have shorter people on average. If you move to a country with shorter average height, your height won't be as big of a discrepancy. Exposure and social skills, of course, we're going to get into those next. But if you're shorter, it's just a matter of fact that you're going to have to carry yourself with more confidence. You're going to have to accept your height for what it is, right? Because if you internalize that insecurity, it's going to be reflected in your interaction. So I know this sounds cringe, but you do actually want to have confidence. You want to carry yourself like you're the man, even despite being short, and just do a shit ton more volume. Be persistent. By the way, guys, since I'm outlining every possible thing that contributes to, you know, somebody not having the dating life that they want, I'm kind of speed running through these. So I'm not going in depth on the solutions as I could be. If you want to see more specific in-depth videos on one of these subtopics, then let me know, comment down below, and I'll definitely address that in the future. So with your looks, we have face, physique, and height. So we've covered face and height. All that's left to cover is physique. And you should get excited at this point because this is arguably the thing that's most within your control. You have full control over your physique. I understand muscle insertions are genetic, your frame is genetic, but generally speaking, your body fat percentage, how much muscle you build, these things are well within your control. So with physique, what is ideal here? How do we appeal to the female gaze with our physique? Sub 15% body fat, right? You want your abs to be visible under all lighting. And this is naturally achievable through diet. Like if you get on the animal-based diet that I told you about, this is going to be very easy to do. Having a wide frame. Now, if you have narrow clavicles, one thing you can do to give the illusion of a wider frame is training your lateral delts. You need to have decent muscle mass as well, right? So like this picture is an example of somebody with good lateral delts, decent muscle mass, a V-taper, and athletic physique. So it's pretty straightforward. We've seen these plenty of times. You know, you don't want to hop on gear, train like a power lifter, and end up looking like a bloat cell, okay? A healthy, decent muscle mass, athletic physique is what we're aiming for, okay? So this is well within your control. I am not a fitness channel, so if you want to learn how to get this kind of physique, there's plenty of good resources you can watch. There's plenty of great fitness YouTubers and stuff you can check out. So we've covered looks, okay? We've covered looks. That is one of the biggest causes of inceldom. And I truly believe that most of the people watching this video can get their looks to an adequate point. But when you do get your looks to that point, you're going to realize very quickly that looks aren't the entire picture, especially if you're not a Chad, which most people are simply not. You're not gonna have women running to you, swooning over you just because of your looks. You're gonna have to put in some level of effort, right? And this is where the exposure and the social skills part come in. Let's look at exposure. So there's really three lead sources of exposure. Number one is cold approach, right? You see a woman that you like when you're out and about and you go up and talk to her. There's two versions of cold approach. There's day game, which is like, you know, you're at a coffee shop, a park, you're on college campus, mall, you see a girl that you like, you go up to her, strike up a conversation, get her number, or maybe potentially go on a date with her right then and there. And then we have nightlife, which are like bars, clubs, concerts, comedy shows. Those are generally the two modes of cold approach. So I would say sufficient volume with cold approaching is you probably want to get about 10 approaches in per week, which, guys, it's really not that much. If you do one approach a day, you're going to get 7 in a week. Maybe one of those days or 2 of those days, just do 2 approaches and that's it, right? That's generally sufficient volume to be able to go on dates consistently with women that you actually like. Whether you choose day, night, or you do both is completely up to you. I know guys who absolutely hate bars and clubs and they only approach in the daytime. They only approach in like these wholesome places. Completely up to you. And I also know guys who hate daytime approaches and only approach in nightlife settings. Regardless, you're still getting the exposure that you want. The next source of exposure is probably the most common, which is online. So we have dating apps like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, and then we have social media like Instagram. So in this case, you really want your profile to be on point. You guys already know my opinion on dating apps. I fucking hate them. All my exposure either comes from ConvoCircle or cold approach, but I've gotten so good at both that I don't really feel like I need to do any online dating whatsoever. But if you insist on doing online dating, here's the advice I'll give you. Number one, optimize your pictures, optimize your profile, continue working on your looks because this is very looks heavy. With social media, there's a little bit more nuance there, which is that you can post a cool lifestyle on Instagram. You can show yourself doing cool things. You can demonstrate more pre-selection. You get to really show the girl a lot more of your personality, which if you're good at doing, you'll actually get a lot better responses and a lot higher quality women. Because almost all girls are on Instagram. Not all girls are on dating apps, right? The girls on dating apps are kind of questionable in my opinion. On dating apps, you want to optimize your photos. Have a photo of you looking out of the window at a coffee shop. Have a photo of you with your dog. Have a photo of you doing a hobby. Make yourself an experience, okay? So that's really going to help with the dating apps. And lastly, we have ConvoCircle, which could be your friend group, hobby groups, fitness or gym circles, whatever kind of people that you see routinely, those will be a part of your social circle. I actually find that, you know, if your game isn't very strong and you're not the best looking, social circle is one of the best ways to meet girls because when they're familiar with you, you tend to get away with a lot more. However, there's also the con, which is that you can poison the well. And you also kind of like, if you screw it up with your social circle and that's all you have, you're kind of screwed. You either have to go find a new social circle or you have to get started in cold approach. So keep that in mind. These are your 3 lead sources, guys. I want you to maximize and get really good at 2 of them, right? So for me, it would be social circle and cold approach. Those are the 2 things that I enjoy doing. Those are the things that I've gotten really good at to the point where it's kind of subconscious for me. If I see a hot girl that I like, I'm just going to cold approach her. I don't think twice about it. I don't have approach anxiety. Well, I do have approach anxiety, but I'm just really good at overcoming it. And yeah, so pick 2, get really good at them, and pretty much maximize your volume. But yeah, so we're done with exposure. We're done with looks. The last cause, which is actually very slept on, unfortunately. A lot of people don't want to admit that this is a bigger factor than they think, is social skills. We've talked about looks. We've talked about putting yourself out there, right? So think of this as the product. Obviously, you know, your personality and charisma and stuff are part of the product. And then we talked about exposure, which is your marketing. Social skills is the glue that puts everything together. It's really how you demonstrate who you are. It's really how you demonstrate the most value. And it's really the thing that's going to make things start clicking in your life. Now, because this is a video where I'm kind of covering everything, I literally don't have enough time to talk about every single point here. There's just so much to social skills. I could talk about it for hours and hours and hours without stopping. So if you want to see a full comprehensive guide to social skills, social dynamics, what exactly to do, you can check out my school. I literally have a module on cold approach, pre-selection, social proof, body language, everything that you could possibly need to get the best results socially. And we get on group calls every single week where I guide guys step by step, answer their questions, and pretty much just give them the sauce. But yeah, let's look at what social skills really entails. So staying in the set longer, what does that mean? It means when you approach, you want to stay in the approach longer. You actually want to have a full conversation and build rapport with the girl instead of just kind of going up to her and saying, hey, I thought you were cute, can I get your number? You really don't want to do that because again, she doesn't know who you are. You haven't built enough trust, enough rapport, and women are kind of forgetful, right? So if you're just a stranger going up to her and asking for her number, most of the time she's just going to flake. So what I tell guys to do is I tell them to stay in the interaction longer, build some rapport, tease a little bit. Your average time talking to her during the approach is like 1 to 2 minutes. Extend it to 10 minutes, extend it to 15 minutes even. If she likes you and she's playing with her hair and she's laughing at what you say, then you really have no reason to cut the interaction short. Remember that you're kind of sinking your teeth into the lead. You're making the lead stronger this way. There's plenty of times where I've done this, and instead of just getting her number, I'm like, yo, what are you doing right now? And she's like, oh, I'm free. And we literally go and grab coffee right then and there, and I just approached this girl. So anything is possible when you stay in the set longer. Keep that in mind. The second thing is your eye contact and your body language and your vocal cadences. With your eye contact, you don't want to stare her down and be weird, but you also want to be able to look at her in the eyes when you say something and take pauses in between your speech. And then we have body language, which is basically a non-verbal way to demonstrate your value. With your body language, you don't want to overthink it. You basically want to maintain a position that's comfortable to you. Even if, you know, you're kind of slouched a bit, it's better to be comfortable than to be uncomfortable and out of the present moment. But generally speaking, there are things you can do with your body language. Like if you're in a nightlife setting, you want to open over the shoulder instead of square on. This lowers the girl's anxiety. This makes you appear more higher value because it's like, oh, he opened, but he's kind of going somewhere. I don't know if he's here to stay in the conversation with me. There's a lot going on there. And then obviously flirting, you know, being able to show intent is a huge one. A lot of guys literally cannot show a girl any intent. They can't demonstrate interest. They're too afraid. They're too passive. And what that does is it lands them in the friend zone because you're not really creating a dynamic that is man to woman, masculine to feminine, whatever you want to call it. Text very minimalistically. You don't want to have long conversations with her on text, full of emojis, full of stories. Save everything in real life. Maintain the mystery on text. Use it for logistical purposes. Meet her in real life. And then we have things like negging, passing shit tests, controlling your frame, pre-selection, push-pull, social proof. All of that stuff, if I talk about in depth, the video is going to be extremely long. So I'm just going to stop it here. These are the 3 things that you have to work on if you are struggling in dating. There's really nothing else to it. Anything else that people have told you is simply a lie. I guarantee you, if you struggle with women, we can always pin it back to one of these 3. Okay, it's definitely related to one of these 3. Oh, and lastly, on the topic of social skills, if you're neurodivergent or you have high inhibition, I recommend looking into nootropics. I'm not going to recommend anything specifically because I'm not a licensed medical professional or anything like that. You can consult your doctor. You can talk. You can figure stuff out. But I do believe, depending on what kind of neurodivergence you have, there are things you can do to limit it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, extracted as much value from it. I hope that you'll be able to apply this in your own life to start seeing results, to start going out there instead of just, you know, coping and complaining all day like a lot of people do. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.